Hello and welcome to the program. You're with the Rise News in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Ahead over the next 60 minutes, all the global headlines you need to know about. I'm Rotimi Kade and you're watching the Rise News Hour. Our top stories. A prominent journalist and several foreigners are among 26 people killed after gunmen stormed a Somali hotel. And the U.S. flights in and out of Louisiana are cancelled as it braces itself for Hurricane Barry, while storm surges and heavy rains are on the way. While the UK Foreign Secretary says the seized Iranian tanker detained by Royal Marines near Gibraltar could be released if the oil is not bound for Syria. And in sports, Romanian Simona Halep crushes Serena Williams' latest bid for a record 24th Grand Slam title. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has wrapped up his visit to Mozambique by visiting a school in the city of Beira. Well, earlier this year, Beira was heavily hit by a tropical cyclone. While Guterres was greeted by school children who sang a song to welcome him. He also surveyed the damaged and destroyed buildings left over from the disaster. Guterres held a press conference in which he pledged to increase solidarity with Mozambique and called on the international community to help support those living in the country.
The UN is here in Mozambique working closely with the government, with the authorities, with the people of Mozambique, and the UN will not leave. We will go on working, but we need much more support from the international community to the people of Mozambique. All the commitments already made, namely in the Donors Conference, are not enough. It is essential to increase solidarity with Mozambique to allow for effective reconstruction, and it's also essential to disburse quickly the commitments already made. In the summit, we'll be asking countries to commit themselves to do everything to make sure that we will not have an increase of temperature higher than 1.5 degrees at the end of the century, and to reach that we will be carbon neutral in 2050, and that states will significantly increase their commitments in 2020, the so-called national determined contributions, namely dramatically reducing emissions until 2030.
UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said the organization welcomed last night's announcement of a ceasefire in the northwestern Syria. Dujarric said that according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, no airstrikes have been reported since midnight, but there are reports of artillery shellings in northern Haman. While the pause comes after 3 months of intense hostilities that have resulted in close to 500 civilians killed and displacement of more than 440,000 people.
On Syria, we can say that we welcome last night's announcement of a ceasefire in the northwest of the country. According to the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, no airstrikes have been reported since midnight, but there are reports of artillery shelling in northern Hama. The pause comes after 3 months of intense hostilities that have resulted in close to 500 civilians killed and the displacement of more than 440,000 people. The UN reminds all parties to the conflict and those who have influence over them of their obligations to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure and the principles of distinction and proportionality enshrined in international humanitarian law.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has warned that humanity faces increasingly painful trade-offs between food security and rising temperatures within decades until it curbs emissions and stops unsustainable farming and deforestation.
Affect more than 70% of ice-free land. A quarter of this land is degraded. The way we produce food and what we eat contributes to the loss of natural ecosystems and declining biodiversity. When land is degraded, it reduces the soil's ability to take up carbon, and this exacerbates climate change. In turn, climate change exacerbates land degradation in many different ways.
Japan, where leaders of the group of 20 largest economies have been meeting. As the summit concludes, as expected, there were efforts by the leaders to thrash out pressing global issues, while the host, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, says there's a need to find common ground to avert trade wars.
今回のサミットでは
I think this summit saw an agreement amongst us on the basic principles to back up free trade mechanisms such as free, fair, discriminatory and open market and conditions for fair competition. Weren't we originally seeking agreement on these principles? We need to go back to the original point so that we can remember what it was we were initially seeking for. This time, we managed to go back to this original point to come to agreeing on these important principles. I said to them that it is important for the world number one and number two economies to build stable economic ties through constructive dialogue. Japan wishes to do our best to offer venues such as this G20 meeting where leaders can meet face-to-face and hold frank dialogue over issues such as trade friction and regional tensions.
世界第1位、第2位の経済大国が
UN agencies have renewed their appeal to the Houthi opposition in Yemen in the hopes fighters will stop diverting much-needed food and aid. The World Food Programme says the 9 million of the 12 million people the UN agency wants to reach are in Houthi-controlled areas. The Houthi leadership controls Yemen's capital Sana'a and many other areas.
WFP sincerely hope that it can reach agreement with the authorities in Houthi areas of Yemen to avoid the suspension, as the need of 12 million people who depend on our assistance are, of course, a priority. The food can arrive easily in the country. The food is in the country. What we need now is access. What we need now is operational independence, access to the most vulnerable, and the start of a biometric registration program. That's something very important. What we say now is that all this needs to stop. We are here to save 12 million people, many of them children and women, to save them from famine. I mean, everybody should work together, and the interest and the first interest of everybody today should be the civilian population. As of today, 87 of these WFP contracted trucks carrying WFP food, but also agricultural supplies from FAO, remain in custody across different security and customs checkpoints across Ibd and Baida governorate.
Since March 2015 up to the 2 of May, we have 7,169 killed, 7,169, and 11,392. So 11,392 injured.